Against? That's carried. Thank you. Now moving to item 10, the Asset Management Improvement Programme Report. So this is the 6-monthly update. Piers, welcome to the table. Thank you for providing the update. And again, if you'd like to make some comments on your report, and then we'll be able to ask you some questions if indeed there are any. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Good morning, councillors. What I'll do is I'll start off with the achievements. This report's slightly different from the last one that was presented. Obviously, we have new council, and it's been hopefully a bit more informative as to what my group is about. For those that have seen the informal update that we had earlier, that hopefully the understanding of what asset management is about is getting clearer. So, moving into some of the achievements that we've got today, and I know that some of these projects feel a little bit esoteric because they're back office and they're quite technical, so I'll step through them and I'll hopefully be able to provide you some overview as to why they're actually important. So the first one, which is the Asset Assessment Intervention Framework. Fundamentally, this is the way that we use all the technical capability within the teams, particularly for this project within Three Waters. And the huge step change that we've had in understanding the information that we brought over from SCIRT during the earthquake rebuild activities. $120 million worth of intellectual property in that one area was brought across. And this project has really focused on how do we use that information and extract value. And the focus has been really around understanding where the criticality sits in our framework of networks and how we're actually going to help plan for the LTP and make sure that we're investing in the right area at the right time within the wastewater and water supply networks. So that project is coming to a conclusion. Fundamentally, that output of that project is being fed into the asset management plans and the thinking and the teams for that. And it's been a Herculean effort where I would suffice to say that we're probably internationally, if not at an Australasian level, leading the pack in our thinking around water networks. Moving on and supporting that intervention framework project is a maintenance contract piece of work. And this is not just about going out to market and tendering for a maintenance contract. This is a whole of system approach. This is a people, processes, information and technology component to ensure that we can extract value. And that's really leveraged some of the work that's gone on within transport. And I'll talk to that in a second. Another very, very complex piece of work when you're trying to work across all these different disciplines within the teams, particularly with the challenges that they face, because these teams are also running their business and they're being asked to engage at a very, very detailed technical level of effectively building the aeroplane while they're flying it, which is pretty challenging for them. And our evaluations project, I call this Press the Button and Get a Number project. And we've had a number of really big successes. And this helps us understand where some of the gaps are in our information. And that obviously leads into supporting a whole range of other projects. I think for me, some of the conversations that have occurred with this particular project have been helping us understand the insurance space. If we can't value our assets really accurately, or at least minimize the cost that we have to expend in doing that piece of work, which typically is a pretty challenging piece of work, again, where we bring external contract staff in to do that. This is removing that cost out of the business straight away. For the Transport Improvement Programme, whilst it's shown here as a line item within the programme, that's a whole of unit approach on improvement. And so a couple of highlights within that. We do that in partnership with NZTA. We've brought them in-house to be part of that improvement programme rather than them just auditing us. And I think the highlight that we've had recently is that we've had the first unqualified audit from NZTA in 6 years. Now, it sounds almost glib to say that, but when you look at what sits behind the scenes and what has actually changed in the way that the teams are approaching their work ethic, the culture, the information that they've got, the system capability that they've got, and the way that NZTA have partnered with us, that to me I'm really proud of, and I know that Richard's team is extremely proud of that piece of work. Coupled with that audit that we've had, we're now beginning to see the fruits of some of the labour of a project that we kicked off 2.5 years ago around our contract management. We're now in the process of having real data around managing our contractors, and we've to date withheld over $300,000 of OPEX in payments through the pain gain model and contract that's in place there. So we can now hold contractors to account as to work whether they have or have not done it. Whereas there has been a lot of challenge in work if we say we're fairly sure that you didn't do this or you didn't meet these metrics. It would be a huge amount of work for us to be able to prove that, and typically would get pushback on. Now we've got the data end to end that's coming from them into our systems, being reported back to them, and they can't argue with their own data. So that alone, $300,000, I'm pretty proud of in that space as well. Moving on, we've tried to take a cookie cutter approach with a lot of these pieces of work. Whilst we do it in transport, we're now moving into Three Waters with the maintenance contract project. Simultaneously to that, we have a parks set of dashboards that are coming out, which are beginning to look at how do we manage our contractor space and what does that actually mean from cost savings. So it's all about information and being able to reflect that back. Talking on the information component, we have another three-letter acronym for you, BIM, Building Information Management. What does that actually mean? This is around life cycle of how information comes in from our contractors, whether it's maintenance and operations activities, whether it is new assets coming into the organisation, and how do we actually look after that. We know that information and the amount of information that we're receiving as a council is increasing at an exponential rate. Our ability to manage that and, more importantly, extract value from that, whether it's against managing a contract and reflecting information that they're sending to us, through to controlling the costs for our IT infrastructure and being able to interrogate that information, provide it meaningfully. That's what this project is doing, and it's pretty much a pan-council piece of work. We're all about information at one level or the other, whether you're receiving reports like this or whether it is you're trying to understand financial metrics, valuation data, how do I invest next within my LTP. And this piece of work is really helping us understand that end-to-end information management component. Coupled with that, back onto the contract space, we talk about facilities data consumption. Well, we're at some point in the near future, we'll be going out to tender for a new contract to manage our facilities. We need to know what facilities we own. At a really simple level, how many facilities do we own, what condition are they in? And so when we go out to market, we need to be able to put that into the space for tendering. Now, contractors will build in that cost if we can't articulate really clearly what it is they're going to be managing. So we're about kind of get the data into the systems in that point. So lastly, we have an AMP project. That is part of an LTP program that Peter's talked to you extensively about. What does an asset management plan project mean? It's really about highlighting all the capability that sits behind the team. And once again, it's a very challenging piece of work to get all that stuff right. So those are some of the achievements over the last 6 or 8 months. We're really trying to move the organisation from reactive into proactive space, and we're beginning to get some data to be able to provide you probably within the next 6 to 8 months around what that looks like and being able to say, this is how we're moving. So those are some of the achievements. I open up to the questions.
Great, thank you. I'll kick up with a couple of questions if I can. My eyes are always drawn to anything that's red on tables. And if we look at the Asset Management Improvement Programme roadmap, which is the attachment there.
Is that attachment A? Or are you talking
attachment C.
C?
Yeah. So, Three Waters Improvement Programme, activity is currently on hold and will be continued as resource and budget allow. Are you able to just give us a little bit more information on what's happening there and why, and what the implications of that might be?
It's slightly misleading in that saying that the improvement programme is on hold. I think what we're trying to illustrate here is that the resources for the AAIF project, that intervention framework project, Three Waters maintenance contract, that's where the resource and focus is right now. We're getting ready for ensuring that the LTP is in the investment capability that's going in there is really focused on, along with the maintenance contract that has some fairly tight deadlines. There's always a lot of improvement activities going on within the team, but there's that the formality of how that stuff is being put together, in the same way that we talk about the transport space, is coming into effect shortly. So it's not that nothing's happening and that something has been put on hold, but the formality and governance of that has been put on hold.
So there's work going on, but in terms of this
Absolutely.
particular project,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. And then, again, another question I ask regularly, you're obviously doing work particularly through the asset management plans work, which aligns with the LTP. It's absolutely vital that that lines up with all of the other matters that we'll be considering in the LTP, the infrastructure strategy, the finance strategy, the service plans and so on. Are you confident that the work that you're doing, appreciating it is a large and complex piece of work, will align with those other moving parts of the LTP so that we can consider the whole lot together at the appropriate time?
Just about every available resource that could have anything to do with the asset management plans is now focused on that between the December through to April 30th timeframe. As the activities of the different work streams within that LTP start coming together, it's ensuring that the conversations are happening, and that, you know, I've got resource specifically dedicated for that. The teams are now trying to understand and getting clarity around what those linkage points are, where the risks are, because if we don't know where exactly they are in some instances today, that will be known over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, clearly that's a high priority for us. We've got the regular LTP updates that this feeds into. But yeah, I'm just very keen to remain confident that this is all aligned as we move forward. And if there is some risk that it's not, I would rather that be called out sooner rather than later so that we can respond to it.
I think there's always risk in such an inherently complex piece of work. All I can say that is now the number one priority, and we've actually changed the name of one of the internal projects for that, particularly in the AMP integration component now. So that's really ensuring that people keep that front of mind with everything that they're doing and keeping the conversations going.
Yeah, thank you. I think that'll continue to be an area of focus for us as we consider the LTP updates as well. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions? Sam.
Hey, thanks very much for this. I just wondered, you know, going forward, what will be the mechanism by which we can, like under here, we've got 2.4, improve cost efficiency and reduce costs. So completely agree with what you're doing. What's the sort of mechanism from your point of view, rather than the business units, that will sort of monitor that, or where will we see the tangible outcomes from your end?
So from any normal project delivery aspect, we have a benefits realisation framework from that. Whether it's a big ticket item that I talked about, around, you know, $300,000 worth of OPEX savings in transport through managing the contracts, or whether it's efficiency gains in not having to repeat work. There are a number of technical projects where we're now, for instance, pushing the onus from information and quality checking for information being handed over, whether it's a metro centre when it comes into council, back onto the contract to actually ensure they're giving us the quality information so we can then manage it going forward. Typically, contractors in the past have handed information over, they don't care about it, and it's our job to then do the quality checking of that, and that alone is a huge challenge for us to manage. So whether it's just removing those type of small steps right the way through to being able to manage contracts more efficiently and extract value, that's all captured as part of the project life cycle that we do.
So I mean, to follow that up, I mean, one of the recommendations here is note the value of continuing to invest in the asset management improvement program.
Yeah.
So I guess going forward, it would be good to see, even just at a really high level, some of those tangible savings.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne.
I was asking Peter before a question that probably you could perhaps help with. I'm trying to understand the relationship between an asset and its value, and its relationship to in maintaining that asset, and the relationship to levels of service. So an example I'm thinking of which is really pertinent in my ward, is that we have new subdivisions that are handed over to the council, and they are in a certain condition. And then residents have an expectation that that level of maintenance will continue, and they will continue to look like that forever. At that point, does the council do an evaluation of standard that is there, and do they then place levels of service in to maintain that, or do they just put levels of service that are generic to all parks? And, you know, as an asset, it's a new asset to the council. Do we look at it through those eyes of what it looks like now and to maintain that, or do we look at it through the eyes of any other park? Because if we are just looking at it through the eyes of this is just any other park, we're going to have a lot of dissatisfaction from residents, which will then feed into levels of service discussions. So I'm just wondering if you can help me understand that.
Okay, so if I reflect your question, I think there are a couple of components to it. The first part is, do we apply or have different expectations around levels of service on a per asset basis or per class? I don't believe that's the case, but that would be a question really for Andrew Rutledge. I think the second component is from taking an asset, and I'll use the analogy of, you know, you acquire a almost brand new car, previously loved car, it's all shiny and polished. Your expectation when you buy that car and you turn up at the car lot is that it's a nice, shiny new car and it smells like new car and drives like new car. Your ability to maintain that car in a functional, at a functional level, depending on how sensitive you are about that car, depends on what level of service you would set. So you might be out there every weekend polishing it, cleaning the wheel arches and everything else, or at the other end of the scale, you might be saying it drives forward, it stops. I don't really care if it's covered in whatever it's covered in. It still provides a level of service, but it's just at what level of perceived condition. It gives you a performance. So it really comes down to the individual asset managers to set what that performance level is, that condition perceived or otherwise is. So for a park, it might be all neatly, you know, you've got the clippers out. Would we manage it at that level? There's a cost implication to keeping it at that level, having the car polished every week. And that's considered as part of the LTP and annual plan processes for that. But I think the third part of the question is it realistic to expect a brand new polished car for the forecourt to be maintained in that brand new polished state from a ward member? That's really up to. Pardon? So I think that's. I think I heard Holden somewhere in the line.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Is there a discussion that has to be had between developers and the council in terms of this, in terms of what they're giving us, and you know, the level of expectation? So residents will buy a house in a beautifully manicured subdivision. Is it a fair expectation on council? I mean, how do we manage that conversation?
It's a function of cost. Yeah, if you want
it is.
It's just a function of cost in that place, and ultimately it comes down to the somewhat challenging balancing act you have around keeping it in a perfect grade, what we would refer to technically as a grade 1 condition, versus allowing it to be functional at potentially a grade 3, and there's a cost, and they tend to go exponentially up to maintain it in that. Yep. You know, Kew Gardens versus.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's all about the money. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. No further questions. I'm happy to move the recommendations in front of us. Sam, you're happy to second. All those in favour say, Yanni?
You don't seem to like debate. Can we just speak to it and debate?
I'm very happy for you to speak to it.
Cool. I just wanted to just acknowledge the huge work that's gone on. I mean, this has been a huge amount of effort, and through the experience of post-earthquake and skirt and all the things that we've faced, I really just wanted to commend you, Piers, for the work that you and your team have done, because it is actually really amazing to kind of see the progress and to start getting to the point where we're seeing the positive benefits from all that work. So thank you for what you're doing. I know it's very detailed and complex at times, but actually you've simplified it in a way that I think makes us understand that there's some real benefits to being on top of these things, and I just certainly as a councillor I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thanks for your comments, Yanni. Often these reports don't provoke a lot in the way of debate. Thanks for those comments. Absolutely appreciated, and thanks for the work that you're doing, and pass that on to the team as well. So this has been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried.